Hey guys, tonight we step into a place where silence doesn't feel empty, but charged, where every flicker of torchlight seems to tremble with anticipation. It's Paris, the heart of France, though you probably won't survive the way we're about to experience it. A square waits in the pale hours before dawn, stones cold with dew, wood creaking under the weight of scaffolds, hastily built but solid in their purpose. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me your local time and location down in the comments like knowing where in the world these shadows are reaching. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand in the square as the city exhales its night. Paris in the 18th century does not sleep quietly. Carts rattle along the cobbles. Church bells murmur in the distance. Dogs bark at ghosts they cannot see. But this morning, a different hum rises. You hear whispers traveling down crooked alleyways, a single word growing louder with each step. The scaffold, painted dark against the paling sky, looms before you. Workers are already here, moving briskly, but without chatter. They carry buckets of lime, planks for reinforcement, tools to fasten iron spikes along the scaffold's edge. These are not men who dream of glory. They're paid in coin, in bread, in anonymity. Theirs is a job no one envies, but everyone tolerates. The ritual demands them. You notice a cart drawn to the scaffold, covered with rough cloth. What lies beneath is no mystery, though the cloth strains against shapes that suggest what you don't yet see. The heads are waiting, wrapped and bound, separated from their former bodies by the swift descent of a blade only hours ago. France in these years is a place trembling between fear and hunger, between monarchy and the whisper of revolution. Executions are not rare here. They are woven into the public life of the city. People have grown used to them, the way you might grow used to the daily tolling of bells. But what you are about to witness is something different. Not just the death of men, but the exhibition of their remains. Historians still argue whether this practice began as a deterrent or as pure theater. Was it about keeping the people obedient or feeding them the grim drama they secretly craved? Perhaps it was both. You feel a stir at your back. The crowd has begun to gather. Peasants in patched coats, merchants with baskets half filled from morning stalls, children clinging to skirts or trousers. Everyone pushes forward, eyes wide, breaths quick. There is no laughter, no song, just the scrape of shoes against stone and the low hiss of whispers. They know what they've come to see. The first rays of the sun slide across the scaffold, touching the spikes in a dull glimmer. The air is cool, yet heavy with expectation. A vendor slips through the crowd, selling roasted chestnuts. The smell mingles strangely with the faint iron temps that clings to the stage. Even death, it seems, cannot stop the commerce of Paris. You glance again at the workers. One wipes sweat from his brow, though the morning is cold. Another adjusts the iron nails with slow, deliberate turns, as though prolonging the moment before horror becomes visible. These men, too, are part of the play. Their movements build suspense, though they may not intend it. From the edge of the square, a bell tolls. A single note, long and resonant, rolling through the crowd like a warning. Mothers press children closer. Men lean forward, eyes narrowing. You sense the collective breath of hundreds hanging in the air, unbroken, waiting. The cloth is lifted from the cart. For now, only the workers see what lies beneath. But you catch a glimpse of dark hair, the pale curve of a cheek, the rigid stillness of what was once a man. Soon these faces will no longer belong to themselves. They will belong to the square, to Paris, to history. It is not the execution itself that matters here. That moment is already finished, the blade already fallen. What matters now is the display, the message carved not in flesh, but in memory. Each head will stand as a silent speech, repeating the power of those who ordered it and the fate of those who defied it. And you standing among the restless crowd cannot turn away. The stage has been set. The hour has arrived. Paris waits to see its new trophies lifted into the light. The cloth is pulled back, and suddenly the square exhales. You hear it in the shifting of bodies, in the faint gasp of children, in the deep murmur of men pressing forward. What lies in the cart is no longer a rumor, but a certainty. The severed heads rest side by side, pale and rigid, their features frozen at the moment the blade severed breath from body. Some eyes are shut, as if in sleep, others half open, glassy, still reflecting fragments of torchlight. The workers do not pause. One man lifts the first head by the hair. You notice how carefully he does it? Not with reverence, but with practiced steadiness, as though the object is fragile glass rather than flesh. He carries it to the nearest pike. With a sharp movement, he pushes it down onto the iron spike until it holds fast. A drop of dark fluid stains the wood below. The crowd leans closer. There is no scream, no wave of chaconne, a strange hum, sound made of hundreds of throats breathing together like the stirring of wind before a storm. You realize that they are not horrified. They are expectant. This is their theater. In ancient Rome, the heads of enemies had been paraded through streets as symbols of conquest. Set before the rostra to remind the people who commanded life and death, France has borrowed this ritual, reshaped it, and given it a stage of its own. And here, on this wooden platform in Paris, the ancient act comes alive again. Another head is lifted, another pike crowned. The faces form a grim procession, each one a silent witness to its own destruction. Some in the crowd whisper the names of the condemned. Others spit, jeer, or point. Few simply stare, lost in thought, as if measuring themselves against the fate of these men. Historians still debate how much of the crowd truly supported this spectacle. Were they united in fear, or divided between horror and fascination? Accounts differ. Some memoirs describe cheering, laughter, even celebration. Others tell of mothers shielding their children's eyes, of priests crossing themselves in silence. Perhaps both our true crowds are never of one mind. A woman beside you whispers to her husband. You catch fragments of her words. Traitor, justice. Never again. Her face is hard, her eyes set on the heads. For her, the display is not entertainment, but confirmation that order still holds, that rebellion is punished, that she and her children are safe for another day. The heads, however, do not share her conviction. They look past the crowd, eyes dull, lips parted as if still trying to speak. You notice how human they remain. Scar across a forehead, a wrinkle at the corner of a mouth, a trace of stubble along a jaw. These were men, not symbols. Yet the longer you stare, the more they seem to lose their individuality. Together, they become a wall of warning, a chorus of silence. One worker adjusts a head that leans too far forward. Another wipes his hands on his apron, leaving streaks that shine faintly in the morning light. These men treat the task with the same routine care a market butcher might give his wares. Yet their every movement is watched, judged, remembered. A child's voice rises above the murmur. He laughs. The sound is thin, out of place, but it ripples through the crowd. A few adults chuckle nervously as if his laughter has given them permission to release tension. The workers ignore it. The heads stare on. By now, a line of pikes frames the scaffold, each crowned with its grim ornament. The effect is overwhelming. The crowd does not need words to understand what is being said. This is the price of defiance, the cost of betrayal, the future of any who think themselves above the law. Yet beneath the fear there is something else, a strange pride, even awe. These displays were not only punishments but performances of authority. They told the people that the state was strong enough to destroy, bold enough to show its power openly, and ruthless enough to let the dead speak longer than the living. You realize that the ritual is not finished. It has only begun. The heads will remain here day after day, while the city passes beneath them. Children will grow accustomed to walking under their gaze. Merchants will set up stalls at the scaffold's base. The living will weave their lives around the dead, until the faces become part of the square itself. For now, though, the ritual belongs to this moment. The sun climbs higher, warming the stone, casting long shadows from the pikes. The heads glisten faintly, each one crowned by light as though in mockery of halos. And you, caught in the tide of the crowd, cannot decide whether to look away or to keep staring until the images burn themselves into your memory. The morning drifts into day, and Paris does what it always does. It moves on. You remain in the square, yet the tension of the unveiling has dissolved into something quieter, more unsettling. Where once the crowd pressed tight, now it thins and spreads, forming streams that pour into the side streets. People return to their errands, but always with a glance back at the scaffold, as if afraid to turn their backs fully on the row of heads. Merchants are the first to reclaim the space. A man drags his cart of bread closer to the scaffold, arranging loaves with brisk efficiency. Another sets up a stall of salted fish, its sharp scent cutting through the lingering odor of iron and smoke. To them, the heads are not obstacles, but magnets. The more people who linger in the square, the more customers their stalls will draw. Commerce thrives even under the shadow of death. Children creep forward, some clutching one another's sleeves, others bold enough to step almost to the base of the scaffold. They peer upward with wide eyes, whispering names, daring each other to stare the longest. You see one boy toss a pebble that clinks against the wood. His friends giggle, though they quickly fall silent, when an adult shouts. Historians still argue whether these moments hardened the children of Paris, or whether the sight of the scaffold left them scarred for life. A few memoirs recall boys sketching the faces in the dirt with sticks, reenacting the execution in play. Others describe nightmares, children waking in tears at the memory of unblinking eyes. But here in this moment, you see only curiosity, a dangerous kind, born of repetition. The more the heads remain, the less frightening they become. What once was horror slowly settles into the rhythm of daily life. Priest passes, making the sign of the cross, muttering prayers beneath his breath. He does not pause to look directly at the heads, yet his pace slows as he moves beneath them. A woman selling fruit calls out, her voice steady, almost cheerful. Apples tumble into the hands of buyers. Somewhere in the square, a fiddler begins to play, the thin melody weaving through the voices. The scaffold, though, never vanishes. Even as life resumes, it stands like a tooth in the city's mouth, jagged and unyielding. The heads, now catching the full weight of the afternoon sun, seem to sag slightly. A lock of hair stirs in the breeze, flies circles lazily, then disappears into the open mouth of one. The people notice. They shift uneasily, glance away, yet return again and again with their eyes. The line between spectacle and revulsion grows thinner as the hours stretch on. What drew them close now pushes them back. Still, no one dares to demand removal. The longer the display endures, the stronger its message becomes. You follow the streets branching from the square, and still the scaffold follows you. Even when you no longer see it, you sense it. Vendors call to you, beggars stretch their hands, but behind them all lurks the silent line of faces. It is as if the whole city has gained new watchmen, silent judges peering down from their posts. Children play at marbles in an alley, yet when one strikes the other, he shouts, "Off with your head!" The phrase echoes with casual cruelty borrowed from the square. A woman scolds her son, telling him he will end up on the scaffold if he keeps misbehaving. The punishment becomes proverb, as natural in the mouth as bread or water. There is an obscure account, rarely mentioned, of a market stall that positioned itself directly beneath a scaffold. The merchant, so the tale goes, believed the heads drew more customers than any bell or cry could. Shoppers, unable to resist their morbid fascination, would stop for bread and linger for a glimpse, unwilling to admit which need truly pulled them close. Whether this story is fact or fable, it carries the weight of truth. Where crowds gather, commerce follows, and yet, amid the noise, you catch moments of silence. A young girl clutching her mother's hand, staring upward with a face too still for her age. An old man pausing at the edge of the square, hat clutched to his chest, eyes clouded with memory. He has seen this before, perhaps too many times, and knows what it means. For him, the spectacle is not fresh, it is history repeating itself again and again. The city hums, markets bustle, life resumes its course. But every street you walk, every voice you hear seems to echo the same unspoken refrain. Look up, remember, obey. The scaffold has done its work. The heads are no longer men, no longer lives. They are signs hanging, silent, enduring signs. And as dusk approaches, you feel it deepen. The market stalls close. Children are called home. Shadows stretch long across the cobbles. Yet above them all, the faces remain, staring endlessly as if waiting for the night to bring them new witnesses. Night folds across Paris, but the scaffold does not sleep. Torches flare along the square, their flames bending in the wind, their light painting the heads in wavering orange. You stand among those who still linger, traders too slow to leave. Drunks swaying in fascination, wanderers drawn by curiosity, The faces stare out as though caught between shadow and fire, their mouths frozen half open, as if about to whisper words that never arrive. The city quiets, yet the silence is not empty. Dogs bark, carts creak on distant streets, a baby wails through a shuttered window. Each sound seems sharper here, echoing against the scaffold. You cannot look at the heads without imagining that they are listening to holding vigil as the living sleep. When dawn returns, the change is clear. Flesh begins its slow betrayal of form. What was once pale and rigid now darkens, lips drying, skin tightening against bone, lock of hair detaches, drifting down to the boards below. The heads are still recognizable, but only just. The transformation is subtle, yet certain. The faces that once warned in sharp clarity now blur into grotesque masks. Crowds return, though smaller now. Some come not for justice, but for curiosity. They whisper about the changes, pointing at details, remarking how the once human features are being swallowed by time. One merchant laughs nervously and calls it God's second punishment. His words linger, as if daring others to contradict him. Do historians still debate the intent of leaving heads on display so long? Was it meant to amplify fear, to stretch terror across days rather than moments? Or was it carelessness, a failure to recognize how quickly decay strips power from flesh? Some argue the slow disfigurement only deepened the warning, turning memory sharper than the faces themselves. By the second day, the flies arrive in earnest. They circle constantly, darting in and out of mouths, gathering at the corners of eyes. The crowd thins further. Vendors move their stalls a little farther away, no longer eager to sell directly under the scaffold's shadow. Children are pulled more quickly by their mothers, told not to look up. Still, there are those who remain. Old men sit on benches, watching silently, their faces unreadable. Perhaps they see justice, perhaps inevitability, perhaps only the echo of their own future. A few students sketch the heads, charcoal scratching on parchment. Their lines are quick, precise, as if the need to capture this fading spectacle outweighs any fear of being seen. Days stretch into a week. The heads are no longer faces but shapes. Noses collapse, cheeks sink inward, teeth protrude like small, cruel lanterns. The crowd barely notices anymore. Life continues. Markets bustle. Bells ring. Lovers meet in corners. The scaffold fades into background, yet remains unmovably, shadow stitched into the fabric of the city. There is an obscure account from a Parisian diary, rarely quoted, that tells of a woman who visited the scaffold each morning to pray. She said the faces reminded her not of death but of the fragility of power. She believed the heads belonged not only to the condemned, but to every ruler who imagined themselves untouchable. Her words, written in the margins of a tattered notebook, remind us that meaning is never owned by authority alone. The authorities eventually remove the remains. No ceremony accompanies it. Workers simply climb the scaffold, pry the heads from their posts, and drop them into sacks. The crowd barely reacts. Some watch with mild relief, others with disappointment. By now, the lesson has already been taught. And yet, even after the scaffold is bare, the memory does not leave. The people continue to glance at the square, as if expecting to see the faces again. Children who once played marbles now dream of eyes staring down at them. Merchants speak of the week, when business thrived under the gaze of the condemned. And you, though only a witness carried by this story, feel the weight of their silence still pressing against your chest. The heads are gone, but they remain. Their features decay into the soil, yet their images root into memory. Paris cannot unsee them, neither can you. The square is quiet again. No pikes, no faces. Only the ordinary life of a city still learning how to survive itself. But as you turn away, you sense that the scaffold has not truly disappeared. It lingers behind every wall, every shadowed alley, every whisper of justice. It is not wood and iron, it is memory itself, harder to dismantle, harder to bury. The story softens now, as it must. The crowd is gone, the scaffold dismantled, and the square lies empty beneath a sky that grows pale with mourning. Where once there were torches and gasps, now there is only the slow rhythm of carts, the low murmur of voices heading to market, the distant ring of a church bell. You imagine walking through the square alone, Stones feel cold beneath your feet, yet the air carries no trace of what stood here days before. Still, memory lingers where wood and iron have vanished. The heads may be gone, but their shadows remain long, invisible, heavy. The city continues as it always does. Children grow, merchants trade, priests mutter their prayers. But every passerby, even years later, remembers the sight of faces fixed above them, silent in judgment, unmoving in time. It is not the flesh that endures, nor even the spectacle, but the impression left on those who walked beneath. History is like this square forever layered, forever echoing. The scaffold has been torn down, but its memory lives in ink, in stories, in the uneasy silence that follows when the crowd has left, so you walk on. Past the stalls, past the alleys, past the stones that once carried the weight of wood and iron. The air grows lighter with each step. The noise of the city rises again, the laughter of a child, the clatter of hooves, the whisper of wind across the rooftops. You carry the image with you, but its sharpness softens. The heads fade, the pikes blur, until what remains is not horror but stillness. A reminder of the power of memory and how it outlasts flesh, sound, even time itself. And so the night closes.